The Collapse video series is for entertainment purposes only. Do not commit acts of violence. Wednesday. It has only been 1 week since the day the power went out. The cities in the United States and Canada are in shambles. They look like they've been through a war. A rare few pyromaniacs seize the opportunity to begin a prolific binge of fire starting. Stores and offices are completely looted. Without functioning toilets, the streets have become sewers. The elderly and disabled who are unable to go look for water have died in their homes. The smell of death, raw sewage, and burning buildings fills the air. Before the collapse, there was approximately 500,000 people in the US and Canada on dialysis. A person without kidney function can live 1 week without dialysis. When the lights went out, those patients went to the hospitals where they were able to get what they needed. That lasted a few days. They have now been without dialysis for less than a week, but they get weaker with every passing day. They experience fatigue and weakness, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, and other symptoms. Combined with the lack of water and other stresses of the grid down, people are succumbing to kidney failure in less than a week without dialysis. Former dialysis patients are beginning to die. The National Guard was only able to set up 3 refugee camps, all near major cities with water scarcity: Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. The refugee camp near Phoenix was also created because the Palo Verde nuclear power plant is expected to melt down in a little over a week from now. The National Guard was under orders not to give gasoline directly to the people for their own vehicles, but they did transport residents and whatever they could carry in military buses to refugee camps. The Las Vegas residents were brought to Lake Mead. Los Angeles residents, the ones who didn't flee to Mexico, are brought to the San Gabriel Reservoir, and Phoenix residents are brought to Roosevelt Lake. No one was forced to leave, but those who decided to stay in the waterless cities have a low chance of survival. The locations of the camps were chosen because of their abundant water, but food and sanitation remain problems. Food cannot be brought in fast enough, and human waste cannot be removed fast enough. There are about 340,000 Army National Guard, including active and reserves. After the grid went down, the reserves were called up in every state, but not everyone could be reached before their phones went dead. Of the 300,000 who were called up, about 2/3 were sent to the cities and refugee camps. The rest are collecting and maintaining supplies, guarding the governor and prominent state government officials, and guarding critical strategic structures such as bridges and nuclear power stations. The governors still don't know who attacked the grid, and they don't know if there will be future attacks. Critical structures are being guarded just in case. The influx of National Guard into the cities plus state police have increased law enforcement in the cities to double the norm at a time when 2/3 of the city have departed. It would seem to be more than enough to maintain order. But most of the criminal element in the cities is concentrated in just a few poor neighborhoods, and those are the people who have stayed. The majority of criminals know they will not find acceptance anywhere but in their current social groups. It's important for them to stay together now more than ever, which is easiest if they stay put. The chaos of the past week has invigorated them, leading them to challenge the authorities and steal as much as they can get away with. As many law enforcement officers as there are, the criminals still outnumber them 5-1. They fail to understand that the people they are fighting with are the ones who are keeping them alive. The National Guard soldiers and state and local police are getting demoralized. People they are trying to save are fighting them at every turn, and they have no way to detain troublemakers. They feel bad for the urban poor who are not troublemakers and are stuck in all of this. But they have difficulty helping them when they are constantly battling the gangs of degenerates. Every day, this seems more like a lost cause. To make things worse, the soldiers are getting into heated arguments over the order to seize firearms from the public. A large portion of the guard and police defied the order, stating it was unconstitutional, and thought everyone should have defied the order. The ones who complied accused those who defied the order of being right-wing extremists. The ones who defied the order accused the others of being useful idiots for the left-wing elites. The National Guard is divided. While all of this is going on, they are worried about their own families. There is food and drinking water for law enforcement and their families, but they don't have functioning toilets and showers, and there is no way to get in touch with family while on duty. Now there are rumors that the food the guard seized from warehouses is being hoarded by politicians and not distributed to the people as they were told it would be. Some officers and soldiers begin deserting in order to go take care of their families. If you had asked them 6 months ago if they would desert in an emergency, they would have been insulted by the question. It is only a fraction that is deserting, but their departure makes the rest think about it. In rural areas, rationing has been going peacefully. It is not enough, though. While most of the food for the country is produced in rural areas, monoculture is common. An area may produce primarily potatoes, or primarily corn, or primarily one particular crop. On a national and global level, these items would be traded for a variety of other products. But now trade has come to a grinding halt. A community cannot live on corn alone. Even if they could, fertilizers and pesticides are no longer being delivered, and irrigation has become impossible without electricity. Farmers don't have fuel to run their harvesters and other equipment. The yields from the fields will be far lower than normal. Some rural areas don't have substantial food crops at all. They produce lumber or coal or cotton. The countryside is better off than the cities and suburbs, but they have hard times and hunger ahead of them. Oil prices increase. The US and Canada are both major world oil producers, though they are also oil consumers. The loss of their combined net exports would be more keenly felt had the manufacturing sectors of China and India not collapsed. The reduction of industry more than makes up for the loss of US and Canadian oil exports. One would think this would lead to a decrease in the price of oil. However, the price of oil is pegged to the US dollar. The oil is sold in US dollars. Normally, when the value of the dollar declines, the oil-producing countries, in explicit agreements with each other, decrease production in order to keep the price of oil high enough to offset the cost of extracting it. With the complete loss of the US financial system, the oil-producing countries aren't sure what to do. They would begin pegging the price to a different stable currency, but at the moment there isn't one. The entire world financial system is in disarray. So, in the immediate aftermath of the global financial crisis where everything is uncertain, they fall back on their normal response to a drop in the value of the US dollar and decrease oil production, which increases the price. This makes most goods more expensive as the transportation of goods has increased. Moving goods from one country to another, or even within a country, requires gasoline, and the cost of gas is part of the price of the good. Many goods will now be just out of reach for those who previously could afford them. Heads of state for members of the European Union meet. They declare a state of emergency due to the multiple crises in the stock market, manufacturing supply chain, banking industry, and oil prices. They agree that action that needs to be taken hasn't happened because there are too many decision makers involved. Committees are slow. One person can issue decisions much faster than a committee, and time is of the essence. They create a new position, Protector of Europe. They select a mild-mannered Belgian man from the immediate staff of the European Council. He has the European Council give him direct control of the European Central Bank. He orders the central bank to loan 800 billion euros to the various banks in Europe so that they can give customers access to their bank accounts. This should have been done days ago, but there were too many decision makers involved and they couldn't come to a consensus. The Protector makes it happen. The European Central Bank did not have 800 billion euros lying around. The money is essentially created by the central bank when the bank lends it to the various private banks, which is similar to printing money. And actually they do that too. More physical money is printed so that the banks can give it to the customers who want it in their hands. The creation of money resolves the banking crisis overnight, not only in Europe, but elsewhere as international banks are able to borrow money from the European Central Bank. This is similar to how international banks got money from the US Federal Reserve Bank in 2008. The run on the banks ends with the Protector getting the credit for solving the banking crisis. The people of Europe begin to have confidence in the Protector's ability to get them through the collapse. The Protector announces that solving the banking crisis does not end the emergency for Europe. There is a long and difficult road ahead. Everyone must be united if they are to pull through. Those who would threaten that unity threatened Europe's very survival. He asserts that the attacks on the grid in North America were perpetrated by right-wing extremists, which also exist in Europe. In order to prevent a similar event in Europe, he must crack down on right-wing extremists. He tells the heads of state that he needs them to provide him with peacekeeping troops under his command to put down any possible future attempts to attack the grid in Europe. Stay tuned for scenes from next week's episode. For an ad-free version of these videos, go to BitChute or Brighteon, links in the description. Even with the ads, there is not enough YouTube ad revenue to support this show. Please consider subscribing on Subscribestar. Next week on The Collapse. People in the suburbs are getting sick from drinking unclean water. Normally in the United States, there are only about 350 to 400 cases of typhoid fever per year. Though in these severely unsanitary conditions, those few cases quickly spread down the interconnected rivers. After 10 days, the number of infected is relatively few, but with no infrastructure in place to mitigate the spread, an epidemic of typhoid fever is inevitable. The die is cast.